turret.
Did they?
Yeah. And then the top turret, of course, could fire forward.
Yeah.
And then these two flexes on the side here.
And the radio man manned one of the side?
No, the navigator mined both of these. Those two side ones back there were waste gunners. The radio man, there's a hatch overhead in his compartment. On the F model, there was an attachment to mount a 50 there.
Yeah.
But the only thing, the 50 was like this. The only thing he could possibly hit was our tail. So I took that 50 away from that radio operator. He didn't get it.
Didn't want to burn somebody.
I fly Army helicopters, or I did, and we would take the door gunners away sometimes because they would hit our rotors.
Yeah, oh, hell yeah. Well, now, these turrets, the top turret, for example, when it turned around toward the tail, it was blocked, so it couldn't fire.
Smart.
And the ball turret, if he aimed it forward, elevated,
Yep.
he could hit our props.
Props come off.
The tips of them as they came around. So it was blocked also in that range.
Yes.
So I appreciated that.
How long when you decided you were going to drop to when the bombs were all out?
It wasn't long. It was microseconds between the, or seconds between the drop. It depended on our target. There's a gadget up in the nose called an intervalometer that was preset. It was predetermined before we ever left what that setting was. And that determined how rapidly they were going to come out. Now, if we were bombing an aircraft factory, they came out a little farther apart because there was a lot of stuff connected with the aircraft factory. They had runways, taxi strips, parking areas, factory building. So we wanted to get the whole thing. So we spread them a little farther apart. Now, the bomb sight was great for its day. It calculated exactly where the airplane should drop the bombs to land right on the target. But it was based upon what the winds were at our altitude.
Winds aloft.
So it figured out what the wind was up there.
Yep. Yep.
But between us and the ground, the wind was different.
Many times, yep.
So here's the way we corrected for our potential inaccuracy. We had a 21 ship formation. All 21 of us dropped at the same time, whenever the lead airplane of the formation dropped. And so let's say our bombs all drifted off to the right. To correct for our potential inaccuracy, there are 21 more right behind us bombing the same target. Behind them, 21 more. Behind them, 21 more.
Yes.
But it worked, huh?
We're going to get it eventually.
Eventually you get it.
One bomb's gonna hit it.
Had to improvise. That's great.
And boy, you know, each one of us on a mission deep into Germany was carrying 10 500-pounders.
Was that a full load, full complement for that trip, for that
Yeah,
distance?
deep into Germany, that's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
we could carry.
For that distance?
Yeah.
What was the average range with an average load?
Well, it was in hours rather than in miles, because hours, the winds aloft, you know, we were up bordering on the jet stream. We were in it one time, but we didn't even know it existed. Nobody knew there was such a thing.
Not until they did Japan did they figure out there was something going on.
Yeah. And
Very
so
true.
we were up there in high altitude, 21, 2, 3, 4,000 feet, in winds that were pretty strong at times. Going in, we went like hell. Coming back,
You're fighting it.
it was pretty slow. Because the prevailing wind in the northern hemisphere is from west to east. And so it was a tailwind going in, predominantly.
And that helps, but God, he probably got corner too. Huh?
Yeah, so my average total hours was about 7.5.
Ooh, wow.
My longest was 11 hours and 20 minutes.
Wow.
11 hours and 20 minutes.
Those are long 11 hours.
Those things are loud and bumpy and noisy and nasty.
Yeah, and cold.
And bone-chilling cold.
Cold. The floor was always sub-zero. Sub-zero. We, in the cockpit, had a little warm air that came from our number 2 engine manifold, pumped across our windshield to defrost the windshield.
That was the warm air for the cockpit.
That was it. And it was pumped down through here, you know,
Oh, wow.
to defrost this class
Yeah,
down
you can see
here.
the hose.
So, we had a little warm air in the front end of the airplane. It
And the
wasn't-
electric suits, I saw that.
Yeah, they
Yeah, one
wore
of
those
these
in the
clothes.
back
Yeah.
because there was no warm air back
And the tail guy got in that little door on the side of the fuselage back there.
there. Well, generally, he got in through where the steps are back there.
Oh, okay, that's where
And
he
he sat on the floor back here during takeoff and landing, and then he crawled back over the tail. He could bail out that little door that's back there.
That's what it was for, okay.
That was probably the most thankless job in the world.
Well, that ball turret.
This guy here.
Back, oh, the one,
Oh,
okay, yeah,
God,
down here.
yeah. Now, he got in from the top, he wasn't in there for takeoff. But this was not retractable.
Oh, okay.
The B-24, theirs was retractable.
This is amazing. I've seen one of these fly just recently
Yeah,
up in Olympia, Washington, where I live,
yeah.
and they brought it in. It was
There's several of them
Amazing.
flying around the States. There are about 10 that are flyable.
Yeah.
I flew one last January.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, for
How
about
was it?
15 minutes.
How was it?
Oh, it was great.
Was it? You like
Yeah,
it?
I twisted the pilot's arm before we took off. I said, any chance I could fly the thing while we're up there? And he said, well, we'll see. We were just flying around over Tucson here.
Okay.
And he got out of the left seat, got in, I got to fly.
All right.
why.
Yeah, one of the ones who's up in Phoenix this summer.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one who lives up there. That's
That
Holt.
lives out at Falcon Field.
Yeah. And they're about 10 flying. The one I got to fly is from Oshkosh.
Oh, okay.
And
That's where his home is?
yeah, aluminum overcast. So
Okay.
And was there a difference in these depending on where they were built? Because
no,
Not where-
not basically there, but then, see, we had the F and the G model. This is G.
yeah.
If you look up on the wall, that airplane, the airplanes in the early part, they were all F model.
Okay.
Get my right one, and there we go. See, there's no chin
Yep,
turret
yep,
on it.
yep.
And none of those that you see over there have a chin turret.
Okay.
Because those are F models. All of our early ones were F. Most of my trips were F. I flew 12 missions in G.
Okay.
And then the rest of my, no, when I got there, they said if you fly 25 missions, you can go home.
Oh, it was 25.
Yeah, originally. And so I got to about 18, got down, and the group commander said, sorry to tell you guys this, but everyone is extended. So they added 3 to mine. And let me tell you, that was a real morale booster.
Oh,
That's why you completed the room really quick, huh?
Oh, gee, because each one you'd wonder, am I gonna get home?
Right, right.
You
Yeah,
just,
this is something we can't even imagine.
it was, every one, day after day, you wondered if you're gonna make it home that day. And then,
What were your barracks like? That's it?
yeah, well, this is about a half one. So this one was shipped to us from our old base, but here's what happened. In our hut, when we got there, 35 crews of us came over together, and we were split up amongst the,
Did y'all get out of school together?
we graduated, we went through combat crew training in Washington, and then all 35 crews came over, and we all went to the 390 to fill up the holes.
Okay.
So in my hut, there were 12 beds. Each crew had 4 officers, 2 pilots, navigator, bombardier. So that's the officers from 30 crews. We got there in late November of 1943. Somewhere early in December, 7th, 10th, somewhere around there, I got sick. We had flown pre-practice missions, but not on combat yet. I got sick and I went over to the flight surgeon and told him, I'm chucking and really feel terrible. He did some checks and he said, I'm gonna keep you here tonight. Tomorrow you're going to the hospital.
Oh,
So they sent me to a hospital about 35 miles away. He said, I think you got yellow jaundice. So they sent me up there. They put me in a ward with a bunch of yellow guys. And I didn't turn as yellow as they were. So after a few weeks, they said, about 2.5 weeks. So they sent me back home. So I came back to the base on Christmas Eve. Walked into the hut. There are 12 beds. Turned the light on. 11 of the mattresses were rolled up. My bed was over in the corner and it was still made. My clothes were still hanging there. I went right across the street was the orderly room of our squadron. I went over and I said, where'd you move my crew? They were right there in that hut. My crew was shot down. All 3 of those crews were shot down while I was gone. 2 of them on their first mission. I'm not sure of the other one, whether it was first or second.
oh man. Oh man.
First mission.
Yeah.
Now here's what happened. They sent us over there. We did a couple practice missions around England to learn how to get home and fly their formation. We had never had any training in flying a very heavy airplane at high altitude in a tight formation. No training at all. The first time we did it was in combat. My crew was shot down in that airplane on the upper left-hand corner. There, where my little green light is, the Royal Flush. On their first mission, they straggled from the formation, and the fighters picked them up.
Get busted out of the
Just
Over
like a
Bremen,
lion
Germany.
on some gazelles. Yeah.
Oh my golly, it was awful. If I were able to go back in time and be the commander of the training command, I would load these things up in training with concrete blocks if necessary to get the weight way up there. And then so go up to 24,000 feet and learn how to fly formation. And then when you
'Cause
went
that's what
into
you had to
combat,
do.
you'd know how to do it. But here, the first mission, we lost a lot of people.
That's terrible.
And I did the same damn thing when I got up there. My first mission, we were up in, I was doing pretty well for a while, and then I started dropping back. And I added a little power, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and I'm still dropping. All of a sudden, that power, see, we had turbo superchargers, and things had to get cranked up.
Oh,
didn't they? So that power took hold, and I went by everybody. Now I pulled off power, standing up on his tail, everybody went by me. Now I'm way back there. Luckily, there were no fighters around when I did it, and that's the last time I did it. You're only allowed one of those.
one chance.
So you had to figure out how to spool up the turbos.
Yeah, you made, if you moved 3 inches, you made a correction. Boy, and it was, we kept that thing right in that position. So you kept that, those throttles were being jockeyed constantly, just a little bit. But boy, if you overdid it,
That's what you should have had training for.
Yeah.
To fly a combat
we
mission.
flew formation, but it was all low altitude with a light airplane.
Flying like a
Send them
sports
flying
car.
somewhere.
Yeah.
From
Load 'em
departure
up
to
with
your
ammo.
base till you came back, how long was the flight?
On combat mission,
Yes.
mine, I flew 28. They said 25 when you go home, but they lied a little bit. And so mine averaged about 7.5 hours from takeoff to landing. My longest was 11 hours and 20 minutes. And that's a long time in this thing. And once we got in the seat, we never left.
Did you ever get shot up?
I never got back without holes.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, never came home without holes in the airplane. Sometimes just a few, and sometimes a lot. It depended, you know, the flak, if it went off here, oh my golly, we took a heck of a beating from the shrapnel flew in all directions. And so it hit us immediately. The stuff that went this way, we ran into it. So we had all kind of holes from one shell that was pretty close to it. But if it went off out in front of us, it would be falling and we'd run into it. I came home one time and dropped out of that. We came and went through that little hole right there. And we didn't have a ladder, by the way. We got a hold of the upper part and flipped our feet in and went in.
Like in the movies.
I don't demonstrate that. I dropped out and I walked over about even with the number one engine over there and our little ways, and I stood there counting holes. I counted 123 holes, and I didn't even go look at this side of the airplane. All of mine were painted, olive drab. And so when we got down, you know, the sheet metal guys were coming out there they cut patches big enough to cover the hole and hold the rib. So they just kept putting patches and patches and patches. So I said to my crew chief one time, I got down, and my airplane was olive drab. So I said, hey Chief, I think it would look kind of neat if you painted all the patches on this airplane yellow. And he said, oh, come on, Lieutenant, the whole damn thing would be yellow.
Did you ever lose any of your crew?
No,
Nobody
except
got
my whole crew,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I mean.
No, I didn't.
Never lost.
I had 4 guys wounded, one of them pretty seriously.
Okay.
The others were rather minor injuries.
Did you keep the same crew chief most of the time?
No, the crew chief was the guy on the ground
Yeah, I
that
know.
took the airplane. If you had to,
Did you get to
okay.
keep the same guys?
No, that meant you had to keep the same airplane. No, here's what happened.
Okay.
I flew 14 missions in one airplane. So that crew chief and I were good buddies.
Yeah.
I flew 7 missions in one other one. So we were good buddies during that time. The rest of them I flew once or twice. I flew 7 different B17s on combat missions. All of them were destroyed after I flew them. All of them. 6 of them in combat or in that area. One of them made it back to the States before they chopped it up.
Okay.
But it was destroyed back then. The one that made it back was named Johnny Walker. So after I learned that, I became a confirmed Scotch drinker. That was the only one that survived out of the 7 that I
You made it to all that, why not, huh?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was a tough time.
Did you ever hear back of how accurate, did you ever do any follow-up to see how accurate some of the bombing runs?
There were people made a survey
Yeah.
afterwards and went into the areas that we had bombed and did an actual survey of the damage. And it was amazing how much destruction. Now, when we were bombing, we were not bombing cities. Our daylight bombing was after specific targets. That's the reason we went in the daytime, because with the Northern Bomb Sight, we had to see our target. So we were bombing things like factories, aircraft factories, ball bearing factories, engine factories, munitions. Those are the things we were after a lot. Now we also bombed railroad marshaling yards, which was the big switching area, and we stopped transportation to and from all directions for a short time when we bombed that. And then we bombed some pens, and I bombed some P-1 rocket sites, and we bombed some airfields, German airfields. The whole continent of Europe was German when I was there, except for the little country of Switzerland. That was the only neutral part in the mainland of Europe. Now, Sweden up above was neutral, and Norway was not. So they're side by side up there, but the mainland was all German. So anywhere we went, we were in enemy territory.
Did you ever fly low on a bomb mission?
12,000, I did several at 12,000, did not like it. The flak was a lot more accurate. It was more accurate at 12,000. So they could get more of them up there faster too. And so the flak was more dangerous at 12,000 feet. I liked it up around 22 or 23,000.
You mean the cold, huh?
Yeah, even if it was cold. 30 to 50 below is what I saw on my outside air temperature. Boy, it was cold outside. And it was cold inside.
What was it inside?
We had that little warm air to defrost our windshield. Came from our number 2 engine manifold, blown with a little blower across our windshield. It wasn't intended to keep us warm, but it did help in the cockpit. The floor was always sub-zero. So I wore big old sheepskin boots over my regular boots and big wool socks.
Was that the issue stuff?
Yeah, big
Some of that
ones.
stuff they have over in.
Yeah, great big sheepskin boots that you pulled on over the other boot.
Did you guys wear the electric heater?
I didn't, but the guys in the back
So,
did.
okay, you guys can get.
Yeah. I had a lot of clothes on, but I didn't wear the electric suit. They've developed an electric suit. There's one back there on display, and that was the beginning of the electric blanket. After the war, they said, well, that thing worked pretty well. Let's try it on a bed.
You can see the heating on them.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like underwear with wires in it. It's a blue dot.
Sir, I'm sorry, I hope you get this a lot. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, thank you. I flew my first combat mission in one of these things in December of 1943, 74 years ago.
Shall
I
we?
was 20 years old.
Okay. Starting to tell the story to a new crew. Okay, quite a story, isn't it?
Okay, just let it run for a little bit.
You hear it fire?
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.